Welcome back to another edition of Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. All right, so we got through all the free agents and all that stuff. Now we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame stuff because there is, it's really funny, Ben, because I guess when Leroy Butler played, I didn't really appreciate the type of player he was or how good he was and how important he was to that team. But again, I was a lot younger then. I didn't probably watch football as closely then, all that sort of stuff. But when you look at everything he did, you look at his stats, but you look at the impact he had on the team and the game and the good defenses he played on and all of that stuff, it's just mind-boggling that the guy has been waiting 14 years and still isn't in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. It is mind-boggling and pretty dumb. It's pretty sad. It's almost like, so the Super Bowl winning Packers from the 90s, the team that made the playoffs every single year that Mike Holmgren was a head coach, he made the playoffs for the Packers. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
And yeah, it's true. Every single year they made the playoffs. So that's at least 7 years, not including the years after that where they were good and made the playoffs that Leroy still played. But during those years, you're telling me that only Brett Favre was the only Hall of Fame player they had, and then Reggie White after that a little bit. That's it. Two guys were Hall of Fame players on the team that won the Super Bowl, had the number one rated defense, the number one rated special teams that year. The one year they won the Super Bowl. They got back again the next year. They were in the playoffs every single year for 7 years in a row. And that was no other Hall of Fame players on the team. Come on. Leroy is a Hall of Famer. And we're going to play a game. We're going to play a game right now.
All right. I don't want to give too much away.
Okay. I don't know what it's called, but I'm going to ask you questions and you're going to tell me what you know. Okay.
Come on. You got a name for it before. What do you got?
I don't know. Butler. It's the bull crap Hall of Fame crap. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? It's
during our official production meeting, you had a name for it.
Did I? Well, I forgot it because it was like 3 hours ago. Okay. So
we don't have right official production meetings.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got 3 of the 4 safeties that were up for a Hall of Fame induction this year. I got the stats in front of me. I do not have John Lynch because he did not make it, but Steve Atwater and Troy Polamalu both made it to the Hall of Fame this year, and Leroy Butler did not. But I have their stats in front of me, and I'm going to ask you questions, and you tell me which 2 of the 3 safeties made this list. Okay?
Okay.
Right, so,
okay. I think I got it.
There's Leroy Butler, Steve Atwater, and Troy Polamalu. Okay?
Yep.
2 of these 3 safeties had double-digit sacks. Can you name the 2 out of those 3 that had double-digit sacks in their careers?
Leroy Butler and Troy Polamalu.
That is correct. Okay. Now, 2 of these safeties had 4 first-team All-Pro votes. So they made the first team All-Pro 4 times. Can you name those 2 safeties out of the 3?
Troy Polamalu and Leroy Butler.
Yes, that is true. Leroy Butler and Troy Polamalu. Here's another one. 2 of these 3 safeties had 30 or more interceptions. Can you name the 2 safeties out of the 3 that had 30 or more interceptions?
Troy Polamalu and Leroy Butler.
Yeah, you're right again. You're right again.
Because Leroy Butler was the first guy to do that stuff, right? He revolutionized the safety position.
He was the first guy to have 20 sacks and over 30 interceptions.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But okay, so
all right, keep going.
So those are all the things. So what does this tell you? Troy Polamalu.
Now you got to ask me another question. 2 of these guys are in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah, all right. So which out of these three guys, which two are in the Hall of Fame, and which one isn't?
Well, Troy Polamalu, and it's got to be Leroy Butler, right?
Nope, it's Steve Atwater for some unknown reason. So here's the thing. I'm looking at these stats, and I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so Troy Polamalu. Now this is a question. This is now we just out of the questions I just asked you, we've established. Okay, Leroy Butler and Troy Polamalu are obviously a step above Steve Atwater. It's not a secret at this point, right?
Right.
So we don't know quite why Troy or Steve Atwater is. I mean, I think Steve Atwater is definitely a Hall of Fame player, but I think Leroy Butler is as well. But Leroy Butler should have made it before Steve Atwater, in my opinion, and he's been waiting all these years, and he's still not in there. Now, here's something here. So Troy Polamalu is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
First ballot.
First ballot.
Wow.
First ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Leroy Butler is 14 years or whatever waiting to get into the Hall of Fame. So let me ask you a question. Who has more sacks, Troy Polamalu or Leroy Butler?
Well, based on that Troy Polamalu was first ballot, it's got to be Troy Polamalu, right?
Nope. It's Leroy Butler. Leroy Butler has 20.5 sacks, and Troy Polamalu has 12 sacks over his career. Barely one a year, where Leroy has like 2 per year. And the funniest part is he didn't actually start getting sacks until 1996, because before that he was playing corner for 3 years, and then when he moved to safety in 93, they didn't have him around the line of scrimmage yet. It wasn't until 1996, the year they went to the Super Bowl and won, that they started playing him more around the line of scrimmage and getting sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So think what would have happened if they would have had him playing that position earlier, or playing around the line of scrimmage even earlier. But anyway, so yeah. So even though Troy Polamalu is a first ballot Hall of Famer and Leroy Butler is not, Leroy Butler has 8.5 more sacks than he does. And the Butler played 12 years and Polamalu played 11 years. And Butler's last year he got hurt and didn't play much at all anyway. So technically he only played 11 years. So that's kind of interesting considering the one guy's first ballot Hall of Fame, the other guy is not even close. Okay, so now here's another question. Who do you think has more interceptions between Troy Polamalu and Leroy Butler?
That's got to be Polamalu because he was first ballot Hall of Famer, right?
Well, you'd think that, wouldn't you?
I do
Let's
think.
go round again. Troy Polamalu had 32 interceptions. Leroy Butler had 38 interceptions in his career.
All right, these things aren't making
he has
sense.
to wait 14 years.
They're not making sense
So,
right now.
Yeah, I know they're not making sense, but these are the numbers. I'm looking at the numbers right in front of me. So not only did Leroy Butler have 8.5 more sacks than Troy Polamalu, he had 6 more interceptions than Troy Polamalu. Okay, he had the same number of All-Pro, first-team All-Pro spots on the All-Pro first team. Right, He had 4.
Okay.
Troy Polamalu had 4. The difference is Leroy made the Pro Bowl only 4 times, where Troy Polamalu made it 8 times. But as we know, the Pro Bowl is a lot more of a, popularity contest, not necessarily how good you are as a player, right?
True. And the other thing to point out about the Pro Bowl back then, in the 90s, players took that a lot more seriously and they went to the Pro Bowl
true.
Versus now where guys get, elected to the Pro Bowl and they're like, oh, that's nice, but I'm not going to go. And then someone else becomes a Pro Bowler because those spots are open. So
right.
It was a lot harder to be a Pro Bowler back in the
If Butler made the Pro Bowl, it's because he deserved it, not because he got in. Because 3 guys decided they didn't want to go.
Right, exactly.
But so the other thing I was going to say now, Troy Polamalu he was 8 times a Pro Bowler, where Leroy was 4 times a Pro Bowler.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I think Troy Polamalu was Defensive Player of the Year one year, because I think he had like 7 interceptions one year. But here's the thing. I want to read you. Here's Leroy's interception stats for his career. Are you ready?
Yep.
His rookie year, right? 3 interceptions. Next year, 3. Next year, 1. Next year, 6. Next year, 3. Next year, 5. Next year, 5. Next year, 5. Next year, 3. Next year, 2. Next year, 2. And then last year he had 0 interceptions, but that's because he didn't play as much.
Mm-hmm.
But he had like 3 or more interceptions almost every year. It was just 92 where he had 1, and then 99 and 2000 where he had 2 and 2. What he was kind of he was a little slowing down at that point. After 99, he was kind of slowing down. Troy Polamalu, are you ready for this? But it's very consistent. It's like 3, 3, 1, 6, 3, 5, 5, 5, 3, 2, 2, 0. Right? Like it's all high number, 3 or more almost every year. Troy Polamalu had, out of his 32 interceptions, for 3 of those years, he got 17 out of those 32. He had a 7, and a 5. Everything else was 3 or 0 or 1 or 0 or 1 or 2. So he was not as consistent as Leroy was in getting the receptions. He didn't have the sacks. And the other thing was Troy Polamalu was able to kind of do whatever he wanted. Like he didn't have to follow the framework of the defense, where Leroy had to actually like play the defense, what was called, and make a play out within the rules of the defense, where Troy Polamalu could just make stuff up and just go crazy. These are just things I'm looking at, and I'm just kind of like, it's blowing my mind that one guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and the other guy is not even, like, this is the first year he was in the finalist realm.
Right.
And
yeah.
his stats are better or the same. It's like, how does that even happen? The other thing is, how does Atwater get in before him? Atwater had only 5 sacks to Leroy's 20.5. Atwater had 24 interceptions to Leroy's 38 interceptions. And Atwater played 11 years. Leroy played 12 years. Atwater had only 2 All-Pro first-team votes. And Leroy had 4. Atwater had 8 Pro Bowls, though. So he was maybe a more consistent Pro Bowl getter, to Leroy's 4. But it's just, and I know he won the Super Bowl twice, where Leroy won it once and didn't win it the other time. But it's just, it's ridiculous. A wrong needs to be righted here. Leroy needs to get in next year, or something stupid is driving me nuts here. How can Troy Polamalu make it his first year? And Butler's got to wait all this time with the same stats. It's dumb. Okay, so now.
Yeah, those things don't make sense.
Here. Now I'm going to ask you, this is the other thing that happened. As you know.
Oh, hold on one
for some
second.
unknown reason.
I want to talk about Leroy.
Okay, yeah.
One other point about Leroy.
Sure, yeah.
So
ahead,
a couple quick things. One thing, he was named the safety for the NFC on the All 90s team, the 90s decade team. And he is the...
Oh, no, it wasn't the NFC. It was the NFL.
Oh, NFL. 90s. Okay, I'm sorry. NFL, All 90s
Butler
decade
and
team.
Atwater.
Okay. He is now the only player from the All 90s team that is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It's
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Now, I know Atwater, he said, had to wait 16 years, and so Leroy even commented on that. He felt really good for him and all that stuff. But Atwater had been at least a finalist before and stuff like that. This is the first time Leroy was a finalist. Okay, so that's just crazy, another crazy note. Okay, but there's some really great stuff about there that you can see about Leroy Butler. First of all, Leroy Butler is just a great guy. He's just an awesome guy. He stayed in Green Bay. You know, he owns like a couple of Ford dealerships and stuff. He hangs around town. He does the Leroy Butler, film exam stuff on YouTube. What is it again? What do you call it?
X's and O's.
X's and O's with Leroy. Okay. And the most boring spoon guy or whatever. Anyway, but Leroy's good.
Yep.
And
Leroy
anyway, and he stayed attached to the Packers and all this cool stuff, right? On top of that, there's an awesome interview. He made it down for the first time. There's an interview. It's on the Packers website. It was like the Good Morning Football people, and you really get to see Leroy. He's always the same guy. You know, he's just this fun-loving, easygoing guy. He overcame a bunch of stuff. He talks about that stuff, but he never dwells on it. He never dwells on some of the stuff he dealt with as a kid. He had issues with his legs. He had other problems. He got picked on a lot, like all this stuff. He'll talk about it, but he never dwells on it. It was just part of him. And if you watch the interview, if you didn't know much about him before, like if you're a younger Packers fan and you never saw those teams, like that's an awesome guy who represented the Packers well, was a great player, and needs to be in the Hall of Fame and isn't. And there's a problem with that. And then the other thing is they did a nice article on him following his experience as well. And he was just really excited to be there. And in the article that thepackers.com wrote, so Wes Hodkiewicz wrote an article with Leroy about his experience when he found out he was not elected to the Hall of Fame. You get a phone call when you're not elected. They knock on your door if you're elected, right? And his response and the way he took it and the way he looked at it was unbelievable. Unbelievably positive and gracious. And that's who the guy is. So not only is he all those things, but he created the Lambeau Leap. You know, I mean, the guy's awesome, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. And if you're a Packers fan, don't know who he is, Leroy Butler, look up some stuff on him that's just recent now. Go back and look up some historical stuff. He's great. And he was not a safety. He was a corner. They converted him to safety because they were going to draft Terrell Buckley, who they thought was good at the time, which, okay, whatever. But that did give Butler a different opportunity in his career, and they did different things with him as a safety, but he was not a big guy safety, but he still had to make all those tackles and play like a safety. He was the size of a corner playing safety, in an era where you had bigger safeties like Atwater who were big hitters and stuff and had those responsibilities. Yep. And Butler was an undersized guy who played the run well and did all that stuff well, but had more skills and abilities to do things like make sacks and make more interceptions and do all those more athletic plays. And the other big bummer part about the timing on this for him, just to kind of put this into perspective, is that, you know, his mom was instrumental in his life. His mom was one of the people that kept him going. You know, he lived in the projects and he didn't have two parents, you know, and his mom did her best and all of that. And she was a person in his life that was always there and kept him grounded and all of that. But she passed away in 2016. So all those years that he was eligible but didn't get in, now he will get in, but his mom's not going to be around to see it. That kind of stinks.
Yeah.
But I hope it is next year because the guy deserves it. He's an awesome player and a great Packer, and he's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer.
If Troy Polamalu and Steve Atwater are, he is.
Yeah.
Because I just told you who's got better stats than Leroy. So.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, here's the other thing that bothered me with this Hall of Fame stuff. So they're adding 15 extra Hall of Fame nominees this year, or guys that made it, who are kind of like just, they didn't have to vote for them or nothing. They're just like, here you go, you're in, kind of thing. And it's kind of ridiculous. So there is a Packer safety who made it, but it's like a Packer safety from like 1942 or something like that. Some, you know, like, I don't know who the heck the guy is, but maybe he was a good safety. I don't know, but he made it. But because Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson are both on TV shows, at halftime, they had the guy show up at halftime of the NFC and the AFC championship games and show up and be like, hey, Bill Cowher, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. And hey, Jimmy Johnson, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. And then that's all they did during the halftime shows. They didn't talk about the games or nothing. They just had these goofy halftime Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher in the Hall of Fame crap. And that's fine if they're in the Hall of Fame, whatever. But there's another guy who needs to be in the Hall of Fame from the 1990s Packers Super Bowl team, and that's Coach Mike Holmgren. This is kind of ridiculous. First of all, Bill Cowher shouldn't even have a Super Bowl win because his Super Bowl win was given to him by the officials when they played the Seahawks and Holmgren and Seahawks got screwed by the refs. And we all know they did because after, when Holmgren had a big speech and he said about how it was hard for them to play 11 against 17 or whatever, and he never got fined by the NFL because it was true. And you can watch stuff online. You can see all the different bullcrap calls that happened in that game. But I don't want to get into that right now. What I do want to talk about, though, is even if you count the Bill Cowher Super Bowl that he got, that was just handed to him as a parting gift before he left and retired the year after a losing season where he got destroyed. The year after he won the Super Bowl somehow, and then he got destroyed next year. But that's that point. Anyways, even if you count that, let's take a look at some of these stats. I'm going to ask you questions. Maybe it's not as big of a question, I guess, but these are stats that show Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher, and Mike Holmgren. Two of these guys are going to be now in the Hall of Fame, and one of them is not. And we're going to look at the stats. Are you ready? Okay. Jimmy Johnson coached for 9 years in the NFL. That was it. 9 years. During those 9 years, he had 2 years with losing record, which isn't that bad. That's actually pretty decent, right? He was a Super Bowl champion twice. His playoff record is 9-4. So that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And he made the playoffs 6 years out of the 9 years he was in. That's a very good percentage too. I mean, it's pretty good. But only a guy who only coached 9 years is in the Hall of Fame, which is still kind of interesting to me.
Yeah,
like his total victories are not even near Holmgren or Cowher's, right? But whatever. Okay. But it's also, the other thing you have to remember, it's not the NFL Hall of Fame. It's called the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So
right.
It might also count some of his college coaching because he was a head coach in college and everything too. So
yeah, but it says pro. I mean, it says Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I know he coached at Miami, so I was thinking about that too as you were talking about it. But I'm like, that's a part. I guess that surprised me. I didn't realize that that's all he coached. All those years were with Dallas, or did he coach in Miami for a little bit?
No. He had 6 with Dallas and 3 with Miami.
3 with the Dolphins.
No, 5 with Dallas. 5 with Dallas and 4 with Miami.
That's okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Okay, so now we're looking at Bill Cowher. Okay, coached 15 years in the NFL, all with the Steelers. He made the playoffs 10 times in those 15 years, which is very good. he only had 3 years with losing record, which is very good. I mean, he only had 3 out of 15 years losing record. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
His playoff record was 12-9, which is above 500. He made 2 AFC champion, or he was AFC champion twice and a Super Bowl champion once, though that was questionable, as we all know.
Right. Yeah,
Okay?
exactly. We laugh about it now, but it was.
So we're talking. So here's where we go, right? We got 3 losing record seasons with him in 15 years, 2 losing record seasons with Jimmy Johnson in 9 years. Mike Holmgren, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
17 years as a head coach, 7 with the Packers, 10 with the Seahawks.
10 with the Seahawks? I did not realize he coached there that long.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
10 with the Seahawks. He had 3 years of a losing record while he was a Seahawks head coach. Okay. Out of those 10 years. He had 0 losing records as a Packer head coach. In 7 years, he had 0 losing records. Not only that, he made the playoffs 12 times in 17 years. He had 13 wins and 11 losses for a over 500, 5.542 record in playoff wins. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's over 500. He's not a losing coach in the playoffs. So I'm trying to get at.
Yep.
He was an NFC champion 3 times, so he made it to 3 Super Bowls. Think about that. These numbers are showing you one thing: the Packer coach got screwed. The Packer safety got screwed. He has 17 years with only 3 years of a losing record. Bill Cowher, 15 years, 9 years of losing, or 3 years of a losing record. Same amount of losing records. He never had a losing record with the Packers. He's got almost the same exact percentage of playoff wins. He made it to 1 more Super Bowl. Not only that, he took 2 totally different teams to the Super Bowl. Not only that, he brought the Packers from being a garbage team for 20 years and brought them back into playoffs and made it right? He made the Seahawks a team that never did anything and got them to the playoffs and to the Super Bowl. And yet he is not in the Hall of Fame. And Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson are. It's kind of another ridiculous thing.
Plus he had he was GM in the Seahawks for a while as well as head coach. He was head coach and GM for a while over there.
Maybe. I know he was the GM of the Browns, and that went south pretty fast.
No, team president. Team president.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, different because they had a GM. But that's wild. I didn't realize Holmgren coached there that long, and I certainly didn't realize that he had. I mean, I knew they were successful, but you're right. It's not like he took over teams that were good. I mean, the Packers were not good for such a long time, and he brought a system and discipline, and he tamed Brett Favre. Like that, one of his biggest accomplishments. You can go back and look at Favre's stats. Look at all of them, and you can look at the years after Holmgren left, and you can see the numbers will show you how much more erratic Brett Favre played during that time. Brett Favre's best years were with Mike Holmgren. Not McCarthy.
Yeah,
Holmgren.
He had a good year. McCarthy.
He had a good year with McCarthy, but that was the first time he had a coach that was more disciplined and demanding more discipline out of him. And then he had one really great year with the Vikings because he was mad. But other than that,
and he hated the Packers.
Right. But I mean, other than that, even though those years were really good, those couple, they don't compare to the years that Holmgren had him and got him familiar with the offense. That was an incredible accomplishment for a coach. Took this wild gunslinger player who everybody, he had these great traits and strong arm and all this stuff, and got him to play within the context of his offense, run it efficiently, and look at the success the team had, Brett Favre had, everybody had. I mean, that's good. That's great coaching. And Holmgren has proven he's a great coach. Dang, I didn't realize some of that stuff, though.
I looked this stuff up because it made me so mad that Polamalu and Cowher, who are Steelers, get in, and Butler and Holmgren don't. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. When the stats are very similar,
right?
If not better by the Packer coach and the Packer player. Troy Polamalu had the long hair, so everybody knew who he was. So just name recognition, and he was everywhere. Like even when in the Super Bowl, when the Packers played the Steelers, it wasn't Ben Roethlisberger's picture up there with Aaron Rodgers. It was Troy Polamalu's picture up there with Aaron Rodgers, right? So I get it. He was the face of the franchise, where Butler was not the face of the franchise. And yeah, Bill Cowher had the big chin and all this kind of stuff, and he spit a lot when he talked. And so you remember him, where Holmgren was kind of just a big walrus-looking guy. You didn't really remember him. I get that. But it's like the coaching. Remember, there's always that clip of Bill Cowher on the sidelines, and he's looking at Greg Lloyd, and his coaching philosophy is just rush the passer.
Get the quarterback.
Just hit the quarterback. That was his great coaching. Just hit the quarterback. Like, really? That's your great coaching? Ugh. And I know Cowher had to go to the Super Bowl with Neil O'Donnell the first time. I get it. Neil O'Donnell sucks.
Yeah.
But still, Holmgren had to go to the Super Bowl with Brett Favre.
Well,
who knows what was going to happen with Brett Favre?
Holmgren had some different challenges. I mean, the receivers weren't great. There were not. I mean, they had the 96 team had a lot of strengths. 97 was still good, but whatever. And then when he went to the Seahawks, it was a totally different team. I mean, he had to revamp the wide receivers in that team, and they still had many issues with their wide receivers. You and I, big fans of Matt Hasselbeck, and used to count how many times guys dropped passes on that team. It was unbelievable how many dropped passes on that team, because Hasselbeck would always throw it almost perfectly, and then they just freaking drop it, and you're like, oh my God, what in the hell is going on? Just catch the ball. But they had all that, they had to develop a running game. There's like all these things. I mean, he had to make some tough decisions and get them right in order to have success in both those locations. And yes, he was with Ron Wolf in Green Bay for a while, but then he also had to make that work. And then in Seattle, he was GM for a while too. So it was, man, I didn't realize all that. But yeah, you're right. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. The only thing is, you were talking, the only thing I thought of was Holmgren, after he got done coaching, he didn't put himself out there a whole bunch. But you got Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson, who've been on these morning show TV football shows every Sunday for years now. And did that have anything to play in the part why the committee was like, well, they're more visible and they're popular because they're on these shows, and so we're going to let them come into the Hall of Fame? You think that had anything to do with the decisions?
Yeah.
Some stupid stuff
it
like
had
that?
100% to be what was the decision. It was kind of like, they're like, it's been 100 years. Let's just throw a couple guys in there. Oh, yeah. Hoo-hoo.
And we can walk in these sets
guys,
on the playoff and surprise them and all that stuff, That's had to be part of the...
It was just a shock or whatever, not a shock thing, but it was just, play up the 100 season. Everybody could see it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all I know is this. All these things that happened, the Cowher, Jimmy Johnson, Troy Polamalu, Steve Atwater, all they prove is that Holmgren and Butler need to be in the Hall of Fame and within the next 3 years, because this is ridiculous if they're not. Because if you let these other guys in, I just told you the stats. I just told you what they did, and they turned teams around. Just like Jimmy Johnson turned the Cowboys around. Bill Cowher, I don't know, the Steelers are always pretty decent. I mean, they weren't terrible, and they've only had one coach before him, really, right? It was Chuck Knox or whatever his name was, or Chuck Noll or what the hell his name was. But he was there for like 20,000 years, right? And he won 4 Super Bowls.
Right. He was there for a long time.
Yeah, and then Cowher showed up at like 1990 or something like that, and then he was a coach for 15 years and got him to the Super Bowl early on, and they lost to the Cowboys, and he got him there against the Seahawks, and there you go. They got lucky and whatever. But it's one of those things where we were talking about this before we recorded about how, Sterling Sharpe, should he be in? The stats don't match up sometimes, but if you take a percentage to years played to stats, he should be in as well. But even a better case would be made for Butler and for Holmgren based on the guys that got in this year. We need to get some more 90s guys in the Hall of Fame. I mean, all we have is Ron Wolf, who cares? And Reggie, yeah, he's awesome. And Favre, yeah, he's going to be a first Hall of Famer. Okay. But there are more guys that made plays on that team and all those teams that were in the playoffs years and years over and over. And Holmgren and Butler need to represent the Packers. And it's one of those things that's got to happen. And all these stats prove it. I rest my case. I wish I could go and talk to these guys who vote on this crap, because I would tell them all this and be like, look, it's right here. It's right here. Hello.
Yeah, you wonder what goes on in some of those decisions, what people are looking at, all that stuff, and who does that. Because have you even heard any rumblings about Holmgren for Hall of Fame? Like, has he even been considered before?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I haven't heard anything, but I just wanted to look it up because I couldn't believe Bill Cowher was in. I was like, really, Bill Cowher? I was like, so I wanted to see. I wanted to see, like, okay, I want to just check and see the difference between Cowher and Holmgren, you know. And they're pretty much identical, except Holmgren took 2 teams to the Super Bowl.
Right.
2 totally different teams. He had to revamp 2 total teams. And one of them, and really neither, they weren't like staples at the time. So I don't know.
And if they didn't get so jobbed by the officials in that game, he would have been the only coach to ever have 2 teams
2 Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
With 2 different teams.
And not only that, but think of how many coaches actually have taken 2 different teams to the Super Bowl. Like
not many.
Andy Reid.
Yep.
Bill Parcells. I think maybe didn't
I think there's
Dick
like
Vermeil, did he make it to the Super Bowl with the Eagles one year?
I can't
Or
remember.
did he only make the NFC Championship game?
I can't remember on that. I think
it can't be.
There's like 4 maybe, I think.
Yeah, it's like a handful of coaches that have taken 2 different teams to the Super Bowl. I mean, come on. And I'm pretty sure the other ones are either in the Hall of Fame or going to be in the Hall of Fame. You know, and now for sure Andy Reid's going to make it because he got a Super Bowl.
Yep.
But if Andy Reid's make it, then why can't Holmgren make it?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
he came from Holmgren's staff. Like he was his quarterback's coach, right? I mean,
so yeah, I whatever. I don't know.
On top of it, one more thing about Holmgren. You know, Matt Hasselbeck was a 6th-round draft pick. Matt Hasselbeck was not a highly touted guy, but that's when he went to Seattle. That's who he wanted for his quarterback, and he made the deal to get him. Like
he traded a 2nd-round pick for him.
Right. Holmgren had the vision and he could evaluate talent enough to know that I want that guy. That guy is an NFL quarterback. I want him on my new team, and he did that. Like that was one of the first things he did after getting there. And that paid off for him. Like that's how they had such a good run of success.
Yeah. Well, I would have rather had Hasselbeck stay as a Packer, and Holmgren could have got Favre.
You know that was never
that didn't happen.
You know that was never going to happen. But Hasselbeck was. And Hasselbeck's another awesome guy too. Love that guy.
Well, he ain't never make the Hall of Fame.
No, he's not. But he's an awesome guy, and he was a great quarterback.
He's one of those. He's like a Micah Hyde. He'll always be one of my favorite Packers, even though, you know, they didn't use him enough or they didn't believe in him or whatever. But, you know, it happens.
Yeah. And, well, you brought up Sterling Sharpe. I was looking up his stats today, too, and that's the other one. That's the other big one that's out there right now for that era of Packers. And, yes, I know he only played 7 years, and his career was cut short by injury and all that stuff. But he was a dominant. There's this whole series of players that were inducted into the Hall of Fame that didn't have long careers, but when they played, they were dominant players. And Sterling Sharpe, that's exactly what he was. He was a dominant player on a crappy team for a while. And they only got better towards the end of his career.
A lot of those other guys that you're talking about that had the short careers that were dominant players were running backs who got the ball 30 times a game back then. You know, like Gale Sayers and Terrell Davis and, you know, all those, you know, guys like that who played 7 or 8 years and were dynamic players and had a whole bunch of stats, but they got the ball tons. Sterling Sharpe had everything he did was based on another guy getting him the ball. Number one. Number two, on a team where there was no other playmakers and the defense knew, hey, put 2 guys over here on this guy or 3 sometimes. And he'd still make the play. And he'd still destroy everybody. Like, if you actually watch games of Sterling Sharpe, your mind would be blown compared to watching games nowadays. Because he was just, you know, guys would be taking his head off. And he'd catch everything. Like, I don't know if he ever dropped anything. And it was just, where nowadays you guys dropping balls. Like, you got Sammy Watkins in the Super Bowl. And you're like, Sammy Watkins, he catches like half the balls, and he's one of the top 6 paid receivers in the league. Sammy Watkins, you can't compare to Sterling Sharpe ever, you know, and he's one of the top paid guys. Like, come on. Sterling was unbelievable. There were times where Sterling was the most dominant player at his position for like at least 4 out of the 7 years he played. he didn't have the stats. Like Jerry Rice had more touchdowns or whatever. But Jerry Rice also had a system that was better. Sharpe didn't have the West Coast system until Holmgren showed up. And before that, he still was catching everything and making plays and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, and better. And Rice had a better supporting cast, more threats around him, so he would, couldn't be singled out so much. But Sharpe had all that going against him, and somehow, and with different quarterbacks as well during his time.
Yeah,
and he still
Anthony Dillwig, Blair Keel.
I was thinking about Blair Keel. Yeah.
The Magic Man. I mean, I love Don Mikowski, but let's face it, he just went back and threw his Sterling Sharpe because that's all he could do, and everybody else did. Then he had Brett Favre, a young Brett Favre, who would just throw rockets into triple coverage, and Sterling would have to catch it and then get his butt hammered by defensive backs all the time, and safeties who would come, like Steve Atwater, back then could take your head off if there was no penalty. Even if the ball was thrown a little bit, they get there a little early or a little late and smack the crap out of you. I mean, they can't do that stuff nowadays. Sterling was doing all that, catching them all and hanging on to the ball after getting slammed. And he's triple covered.
And offenses attacked differently back then too. It wasn't so many passes. It wasn't so up tempo. I mean, he set the record.
No,
he originally set the record for most receptions in the season with 107, and then the following year broke his own record with 112 catches. And it wasn't until a few years later, then all of a sudden, Chris Carter had some big season or whatever, where he had 122 2 years in a row or some crazy stuff like that. But again, that was a different type of receiver. Sterling was also a deep threat. Sterling was also a guy that could stretch the field, and it shows in his yards per catch as well for his career. That was almost 14 for his.
Well, he wasn't really he was a break tackle guy.
Right.
He was a catch it and run you over guy. He wasn't necessarily a speed receiver, but he was so big that guys couldn't bring him down,
Right. And he had enough speed to go deep. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that was his thing, but he had enough speed. He could beat you deep, but he was physical, technician, route runner, strong, and great hands.
Great hands.
Man.
The opposite of Antonio Freeman.
Right. Who definitely is not a Hall of Famer, but he's a Packers Hall of Famer.
And he never once caught a ball with his hands. It was always his chest. Except for that one time where he was laying on the ground and it bounced off a guy's back and fell on him or whatever. That one I think he might have actually caught. He caught that with his belly, but usually it was with his chest.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the Hall of Fame talk. I think that's probably a good spot to end there, but I just wanted to look this stuff up because it made me mad. But whatever.
Hopefully within the next couple years, those guys from the 90s, Butler, Mike Holmgren, as Leroy Butler.
Holmgren. That's Butler, yeah.
Leroy Butler still called.
He still says his name wrong. I know.
That's the one. That's the one knock you can have on Leroy Butler. Everything else about him you gotta like, but he still his coach for all that time, who helped him get a Super Bowl. He still says his name wrong. Mike Holmgren and Sterling Sharpe. I want to see all three of those guys in the next couple of years get in there. So let's hope. We'll talk draft stuff next time on Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for subscribing. Don't forget to do that on the YouTube channel. For Brother Ben, thanks for joining me again, bro. We will we'll catch you guys soon. We don't know when, but these episodes will be coming out, and we'll keep some stuff going during the off season just to keep you entertained. And then again, I'm going to try to talk Ben into some heavy draft analysis if he's up for it later.
Oh boy,
come on, you love the draft.
I know, but I don't have NFL Network this year to watch to get me know what's going on, so I might not know what's going on. We'll have to see.
That's all right. I just heard you. I thought the whole thing was you really liked watching big guys run around in spandex at the combine.
I do like watching the combine because I get to see things that I'll catch guys on there that I think are good, and then they go to the NFL and then they never play. So yay. That happens all the time. Because no, seriously, every time I watch the combine, I'm like, oh, I like this guy. Look at how he's moving. Oh, he must be really awesome. And then I purposely try to see where he goes, and then like he never gets drafted, and he gets signed by like the one of the guy was Rock Thomas or something like that. His name was, or Rock Thompson or something. He was a running back, And he reminded me of Dorsey Levens. He looked kind of like Dorsey Levens. And he got signed by the Vikings last year as a rookie. And he never played. But I liked him. I thought he was going to be good. That was the guy I wanted the Packers to get. Because I wasn't sure, if Jamal Williams could do that sort of thing. Because he'd be a good change of pace from Aaron Jones, because he was a bigger guy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, whatever.
Just goes to show you. Guys run around in spandex.
I don't know anything.
No, it goes to show the guys run around in spandex doing those goofy drills doesn't mean they're going to be good football players. That's all.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't mean anything. Not at all.
But they put a lot of time and effort into it. All those scouts and all those NFL people. So, all right, good enough. All right, brother, we love you. We'll catch you again soon. And thank you, all of you, for watching and listening to Hafeman Brothers Talking Packers.